Hi guys, it's Mark Zicree, Mr. Sci-Fi, also known as Mark Zicree of Space Command, and it's been a little while since I've done one of these Mr. Sci-Fi videos just because we've been so busy. We've been shooting Space Command and prepping the next one, and we're rolling camera in a few weeks on Elaine's feature, The Voiceless Roar, and my new book, Love, Gloria, has just come out on Amazon. Check it out, you'll love it. So much stuff, so much stuff. What a blessed life, my God, and thank you all for all the help you've all been giving me. Today I'm wearing my shirt that reproduces the first edition cover of The Maltese Falcon, and if you'd like to see what the first edition looks like in person, there it is. Pretty cool looking book. They made two bad adaptations of The Maltese Falcon before they made the great Humphrey Bogart one, John Huston directed, and if you buy the Blu-ray of The Maltese Falcon, you can actually see the other two bad versions because they include them, and so it's fascinating. And but that's not what I'm going to be talking about. I'm going to be talking about director's cuts. Now, you know, it's funny because there were many examples in cinema history of movies that were cut down by the studio to fit a certain release time, to remove things that they didn't like particularly, all the way from King Kong, which had certain scenes removed after its initial 1933 release, to Greed, the great Erich von Stroheim adaptation of a Frank Norris novel that was cut from 8 hours to like under 2 hours, totally eviscerated. If only they'd saved that footage, because miniseries didn't exist back then, and he wanted to make a miniseries, basically. And so what you see are very, very truncated and screwed up versions of these movies. And Metropolis, of course, was 40 minutes were cut out of it. Fortunately, that's been found. And, you know, and on and on and on. The Magnificent Ambersons didn't follow what Wells shot. They re-edited it and put in a different ending. The studios held sway and power. And when I was growing up, you didn't have home video, you didn't have VCRs. And so the only time you could see a movie was when it was cut up on TV to fit certain amounts of commercials, or shown in revival houses, which was rarely. And then you might see the entire film. But there was no such thing as a director's cut. I can't think, before the advent of home video, I can't think of a single film, and maybe you guys will, that had a director's cut after its initial release. There might be an extended TV version that would air, that might add certain scenes, but that was usually not under the director's guidance, but rather to fill a certain time slot, and the studio might be throwing stuff back in higgledy-piggledy. You know, no telling. Certain films were allowed to be longer, like Gone with the Wind, but that was a rarity. 2001 also had an intermission in it. And this was all dictated by the fact that movie theaters, wanted to be able to have a certain number of run times of the film during a day, and if the film was 2 hours or less, they could stack it up and increase their profits, whereas if it was 3 hours or more, that limited their revenues. At least that was the perception. But nevertheless, the reigning wisdom all the time I was growing up was that what you saw when it was released is what the movie was, and there might be a slightly longer, version that would come out when it first premiered, and then it would be cut down to tour. But that was about it. And so I was really gratified and amazed when home video started happening, and you started to get director's cuts, because in this case, those directors were able to share their whole vision, and they were able to really bring their complete artistic skills to the version of the film that they wanted you to see. Now, in some cases, these are interesting and illuminating alternatives to the theatrical release. But in some cases, they actually don't work as well. For instance, Donnie Darko, I much prefer the theatrical release version to the director's cut. For me, the added scenes don't help, they detract, but that's rare. But what I want to talk to you now about is several science fiction classics that you must watch only in the director's cut, because they're so significantly different. And I'll also mention two other films that have had releases of alternative versions that I highly recommend. Now, and then I'll talk about what I'm hoping to share with you, soon on Mr. Sci-Fi, which are several incredible. Well, I'll get to it. Let's just say I'll get to it. And by the way, if you still want to buy Space Command shares, $7,500 each, you get a percentage of my producer's royalties. Still selling them, but things are starting to really, really move fast. So email me at markzickery@gmail.com if you'd like. And remember to subscribe and push Mr. Sci-Fi over the top. We're close to 100,000 subscribers. Tell your friends. Get busy, guys. Anyway, back to the subject. So, perhaps, of course, the most famous and greatest, most noted film for its director's cut is this one, Blade Runner. And the reason is fascinating, because when, often the studios assume the audience is dumb, and the filmmaker doesn't hold that assumption, but the studio has final cut, and so their way goes. So with Blade Runner, initially, it had the audience, the studios were very concerned the audience would think the movie was confusing. So they put a voiceover narration on it, which Harrison Ford read very badly, and I think deliberately so they wouldn't use it, but they did use it, and they also shot a different ending. And so in the original theatrical release of Blade Runner, throughout the movie, he has this dopey voiceover, and Paul Salmon, who wrote the wonderful book on the making of Blade Runner, likes the final voiceover, which I don't, because it's Rutger Hauer says, "Time to die now," and dies. Not to spoil the ending for you guys, but in the voiceover, it's like, "I sat all night and I watched him die. He fought it every step of the way." Well, no, the scene is clear. So anyway, but that was and then at the end, in the original version, it has Deckard driving Rachel along this road that was actually, I think, outtakes from the opening footage from The Shining, some damn thing like that, some loopy thing. But the point being, it was not the vision that Ridley Scott had. And so there was one point, and this is one of the great stories of film history. There was one point where years later, the movie was not a financial success, and years later, but it grew as a cult film over the years because it was so spectacular. It's one of my favorite movies. Ridley Scott, there was a revival theater that wanted to screen a print of Blade Runner, and so the studio shipped what they thought was the theatrical cut, but it was actually a director's cut. It was, or a work in progress cut, and it had different scenes. It didn't have the narration, and the audience went wild. And as a result of that, and the audience really, really wanting it, they released a director's cut, and Ridley Scott kept refining it until we got to this, which is the final cut. And this actually also includes, this version includes the theatrical cut. It includes also something really interesting, which is the rough cut. And these all have different choices. Now, of course, one thing I disagree with in the director's cut is Ridley Scott believes Deckard is his replicant, and he puts in this obvious outtake that doesn't work, because the way they had the red eyes work was, it was like when you take a flash picture and there's like the red eye because you're seeing the back of the eye. That's what they did. So you had to be in a specific spot for that effect to work, to say you're a replicant. And obviously Harrison Ford in the background, out of focus, he's not on his mark completely, and it shows his eyes as red. And Ridley Scott put that in to say, oh, he's a replicant. But of course Harrison Ford feels he's not a replicant, and that's my view too. I guess Ridley Scott has final say, but be that as it may. And then they kind of split the difference in Blade Runner 2049, where he said, well, I know what I am, leaving it kind of open to interpretation. But the point is, but other than that, which I find kind of gratuitous and unnecessary, the director's cut is, what's called the final cut is the cut you need to watch. It has as close to the vision of what the film was meant to be as possible. It's an incredible film. It holds up so phenomenally well. But watch the final cut, because that's going to really give you the most entertainment value. Now, another film that I strongly feel you should watch only the director's cut is this, The Abyss. If you've only seen the theatrical cut, you have not seen this movie. The director's cut, see, again, this fell afoul of the 2-hour running time that studios were insisting on, theater owners were insisting on. And fortunately, with home video, it doesn't have to be a specific runtime. It can be any length. And so when James Cameron made The Abyss, they insisted that he cut it down and to a theatrical runtime, and so he cut out all of the character development, or most of it. Many wonderful scenes that set up who these characters are, why you should like them, many, many things. This is, for many, many years, all you could have available to you were the theatrical cut and the director's cut in this DVD edition. But March, well, they've already released for downloadable the director's cut and the original cut in 4K, and they're about to release the 4K disc in March. But watch the director's cut. It's a great film. This may well be my favorite James Cameron film. I mean, I love Aliens, I love Terminator 1 and 2, but this one, I just love the ensemble. I love the characters. In fact, I think on Mr. Sci-Fi, I posted a panel that I was on with some of the actors and other creative personnel from The Abyss. So if you type in Abyss on Mr. Sci-Fi, you'll probably find it, because I did that panel. And in fact, here's my own disc, it's a flying disc. It's a flying disc. Here's my disc of that panel. So if I didn't put it up, remind me and I will. But again, watch The Abyss in the director's cut. It is a thoroughly charming film. It has wonderful characters, wonderful actors, and it really, really works. Now, another movie, science fiction movie, that if you've only seen the theatrical cut, you have not seen this movie, and you'll wonder why I'm recommending it until you see the director's cut. Now, this is Dark City, and it's a wonderful. It stars Rufus Sewell, who later would star in Man in the Iron Castle, or Man in the High Castle, sorry, and this is a noir murder mystery that reveals itself to be a science fiction story. And originally, the studio previewed it out in the boondocks somewhere with an incredibly stupid audience, and their little note card said, "I don't get it, I don't understand it." So what they insisted was that the film be re-edited so the entire mystery is revealed at the beginning. Huge mistake, huge mistake. Now, in this director's cut, and make sure this is the cut you see, the director's cut of Dark City, the director was allowed to put back, and I should mention the director was Alex Proyas, who also did iRobot. The director put it back into the original structure that the screenwriter intended, and it's just a revelation, because and I think the writer is David Goyer, but I'm trying to read the small print here, and God knows, but anyway, but they put it back where the mystery is a mystery, and it starts with a man waking up. He doesn't remember who he is, and he's in an apartment with a dead body that he apparently murdered. And basically he has to prove himself innocent, and things open and open and open and open. William Hurt's in it, Kiefer Sutherland's in it, and of course the wonderful Jennifer Connelly, who's great in this. So check this movie out, but only in the director's cut. You will be well rewarded. It has so many cool things in it. The design is wonderful. The visual design of this, and it's really a great science fiction movie. Now, I said there'd be two other sort of recommendations beyond this. This is I Am Legend. Now, this has been made as a movie 3 times, plus one kind of knockoff. The 3 times it was made, the original one was The Last Man on Earth in the 1960s with Vincent Price. Then it was made into The Omega Man, which is a film I really, really love, with Charlton Heston. And finally, it was made with Will Smith. The rip-off version, or the knockoff version, uncredited, is Night of the Living Dead, which, of course, proved more successful than any of these. And but the whole notion of everyone else in the world is sort of the living dead, either vampires or zombies or zombie-like creatures, and they're trying to get you and kill you. That was the notion that they took and ran with. But Matheson's novel, and I have a first edition of that somewhere up there. I should have pulled it down, but trust me, signed first edition of this wonderful story. But this movie, again, I think it fell afoul of testing. And sometimes, testing before the movie comes out results in reshoots and so forth that make the movie work, that make the movie better. I'm not down on them. World War Z had this crazy third act where the Brad Pitt's wife has to become a prostitute, and he goes to Russia and he gets stuck there for like months and months, and nutty stuff. And it didn't work, and it was awful. And so they basically scrapped the entire third act and filmed as a replacement, that whole scene with him in the HMO, or the, you know, the World Health Organization facility, finding a cure or finding a treatment. So that was, and that's fine. It made the movie work. But you can see a little of what had been in the little voiceover thing at the end that shows these big scenes with, you know, zombies being fought. And but okay, back to I Am Legend. With this film, which you know, is quite, you know, has a lot of great stuff in it. They tested it, the original cut, and the audience didn't like the ending, and so they shot a new ending, in which, and again, this will be a little bit of a spoiler if you haven't seen the movie, but in the original theatrical release of this film, he discovers a cure for these zombie guys and so forth, which means that he kills his dog, who gets zombified needlessly. His beloved dog, he kills his beloved dog because, why, if he just let him live like a day or two longer, he could have cured him. And you go, well, that's upsetting. The reason he kills the dog is because in the original version, there was no cure. He finds no cure. Essentially, the zombies are a new life form, and he has to respect that. And that was much more in keeping with Richard Matheson's original idea, which was a disease causes people to turn into vampires, and our hero is the last remaining human, and he's trying to find a cure, and ultimately he realizes that he's the boogeyman. He's, you know, that they are their own valid life form, and he, you know, doesn't cure, quote unquote, them, and that was the intent. So with this, I suggest you may like the original ending, you may like the new ending, but the alternative ending is the one that I vastly prefer. It makes the movie make sense, and so I would urge you to check that out. And then finally, a non-science fiction film, Godfather III: The Coda. Now, The Godfather, you know, Godfathers 1 and 2 are acknowledged as just, you know, classics, masterpieces, and they are, and they're wonderful. But Godfather 3 came out, and it was just slammed by everyone. Everyone hated it, and it was like, what a letdown. So recently, what Coppola's been doing, Francis Ford Coppola, is he's been re-editing many of his films to make them closer to what he wants them to be. Now, one of the problems, of course, with Godfather 3 was that originally Al Pacino's daughter was going to be played by Winona Ryder, and then for whatever reasons, she had to drop out, and he cast his daughter, who wasn't really an actor, Sofia Coppola, who's now, of course, a famous director. And he got her particularly during that sort of clunky phase of teenage girls, sometimes, not all of them, of course, but where she looked her worst. Now she looks pretty, you know, she's good. She looks good. But during this period, she had this goofy look, and she couldn't act, and it was just every time she's in a scene, it just goes thud. Now that has not been corrected. Someday they'll probably be able to put AI Winona Ryder in this, and it'll be great. But but what he has done is he's re-edited the film and changed the order. And now it is very much about Al Pacino trying to save the Pope, trying to save the Vatican from all of these real-world corruptions that were happening. The banker for the Vatican was found hanging under a bridge, and it really goes into that very, very specifically. And Pacino's great in this. Diane Keaton is great. There's many joys to uncover in this film. So it's the coda. So it's The Godfather Coda, The Death of Michael Corleone. That's the one to watch, not the theatrical release of Godfather 3. And then finally, we come to yet another science fiction masterpiece that I hope to be able to share with you. I've tried it a couple times on Mr. Sci-Fi. They've always made me take it down, but we'll see if we can get around their crazy algorithms, because the masterpiece that I want to recommend you watch in its entirety, which I hope to be able to share with you, is David Lynch's Dune. And you may be going, David Lynch's Dune, that was a terrible movie. Yes, it was a terrible movie in the theatrical release. But let me read you something that was said by Dino De Laurentiis, who produced the movie. He said, the problem with Dune, you know what is the problem with Dune? We had a fantastic movie when we did our cut. It was a 3-hour movie. And Universal said, please, Dino, we don't need 3 hours. We want 2 hours. And I did the mistake of listening to Universal. I cut 1 hour from the movie. When we cut 1 hour from the movie, it was not the same movie. We destroyed in the editing room the movie. So Now, David Lynch has disavowed the movie. It was such a emotionally bruising experience. He was coming off of Eraserhead and The Elephant Man, which was a huge hit, both commercially and artistically. And he just was always, this always felt like an open wound to him. But fortunately, because they'd been releasing many of the deleted scenes on a TV version that was a mess, and also on the home video versions, a fan who goes under the name Spice Diver re-edited the film into as close as we're ever going to get to a director's cut, until David Lynch changes his mind and wades back in. And it's a completely different movie. It's amazing. It doesn't always succeed, but my God, what it offers, particularly when you think of it as being made in the 1980s, is phenomenal. Incredible visuals, incredible cast. So many wonderful, wonderful roles. Many of the characters are more distinctive in my mind in David Lynch's Dune than they are in Denis Villeneuve's. So, I'll try to post this. Hopefully, I'll be able to. I also have come across some Dune rarities that are amazing, and I'm going to share those with you in the next Mr. Sci-Fi. And it's just really amazing. So Spice Diver re-edited the film, put all the pieces back in, put in visual effect shots that were not completed, like the blue eyes and all that stuff, and put it online as an MP4 on YouTube, and then someone up-resed it to 4K. And it looks great, and it's just a phenomenal film. And again, as I say, it doesn't completely succeed, but my God, there's so many amazing moments. The navigators and just the visuals, the sets are incredible. And so we'll be getting into that in a forthcoming Mr. Sci-Fi. But for now, just if you have the access to the movies I've recommended, check them out. I think you'll really love them. If there are other director's cuts that you really like, let me know. And but meantime, we're sharing this wonderful world of science fiction together, and I cannot wait to share more amazing science fiction revelations to you. So remember, again, to subscribe, share, comment, all that stuff. If you want to throw some money our way, it helps a lot in terms of getting Space Command made, in terms of doing all the stuff we're doing. And the name of my new book is Love, Gloria, a memoir of my mother, and that is on Amazon even as I speak. We just hit the world. So that's it for now, and I will talk to you again real soon, and thanks so much for being part of this wonderful adventure. Take care, guys.